Mindset Mashup podcast, here we are. And listen, if you're new to the platform, then you know what to do. Subscribe to the channel. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts, leave a review. If you're listening on Spotify, just drop a follow. Whatever platform you're on, if you could just do something that helps me out, I'd appreciate it. We just went top 200 for entrepreneurship podcast in the UK. So let's push that. Let's get to top 100. And I just want to welcome my guest today, Lewis, from across the pond over in Australia. Lewis, how you doing, my friend?
George, I'm fantastic, man. Thank you so much for having me here. I'm super excited.
That's absolute pleasure. And Lewis, just for those that might not know you listening, say a little bit about yourself and the company.
Yeah, of course. So my name's Lewis. I live, over the pond in Australia. I was actually born in the UK, funnily enough. So yeah, small world. But I run Boost Media Agency. So we're a PR and media company. We essentially help personal brands grow and scale through the media, podcasts, and social media. So yeah, that's our bread and butter.
Whereabouts in UK were you born?
Swindon. So Princess Margaret Hospital. I don't know. I'm pretty sure that hospital is not there anymore. My parents were, I was there till I was 6 weeks old because my parents are Australian in the Air Force. So they were on a posting, and just so happened that, my mum popped me out right before they were due to head back home. And so made getting an Australian passport when I turned 18 an absolute nightmare, because little did I know that I was technically an alien. I had no Australian birth certificate. I had it was a nightmare. But anyway, we're here. We're all good.
Yeah. Hey, there you're in Australia. So Lewis, obviously you're founder, director of Boost Media, and you help businesses. So before we get into that, tell us a bit about your journey as an entrepreneur.
Yeah, so my journey since school has been, like I always just say, unconventional. So I've never been someone who's always been really entrepreneurial minded. It was more just in school growing up, never wanting to get a job. And, the thought of having to put on a suit every day and get dressed up was just not, and work for someone else, most importantly, was just something that I could never see myself doing. And so that shaped a lot of my decisions. It was all kind of moving away from that. And so that led me to go over to America and pursue college golf there. So I was on a scholarship there for 2.5 years, moved back to Australia, hated university here when I was trying to finish. So pretty much wanted to play professional golf because I saw that as the vehicle to not work a job. It was a really great experience because playing sport at a high level teaches you so much, and it's just like business. Business is a sport, right? Some people call it war, but I look at it as a sport, right? You're competing, you got to get better, you got to improve. And so I just applied all the things that I learned pursuing golf at a high level and just applied them in my day-to-day in business. And, I think that served me tremendously in terms of all that. So yeah, I started an events company back in 2019. I've sold 70% of that last year actually, and started Boost Media at the start of 2020 because I kind of foresaw that COVID was happening in China and everywhere. And, if it was to hit Australia, which it obviously did, the whole world, then events would be canceled. So we had to cancel dozens of events, refund everyone. And it was kind of I had to make something else happen. So that was, I guess, how I fell into where I am today, and the rest is history.
I like what you said there about business is sport. I actually prefer that to war, so because sometimes war sounds a bit brutal. And I just want to, you spoke about how you transferred some of the skills that you learned in sport into business. What were some of those skills?
Yeah, so ultimately, I would say discipline, number one. Just not falling in love with the process because it's kind of cliche, but just following the process day in and day out, right? Just having a set structure, a set plan, and just trusting that the results are going to come. And then obviously the consistency, patience, they're kind of generic in a sense, but everyone knows them, but until you actually embody them and do them, it's not the same thing, right? Because my years from 2017 to 2019 was pretty much I'd be up at 5 a.m. every single day in the gym for 2 hours, come home, have breakfast, drive 50 minutes to the golf course, be at the golf course from about 8:30 a.m. until 4:30, 5 p.m., drive 40 minutes home, eat dinner, then go to a local driving range and hit more golf balls, right? Come home 9:30, go to bed, do it all again, pretty much 7 days a week, right? So my biggest lesson from that, outside of like all the benefits, was like I didn't know when to stop, and so I took it too far. And like I'm not a big believer in burnout, but like I really hated golf after that 2 year period. That I was
Yeah.
like, I am going to be the hardest worker, and like I got so much better. But it was interesting, like not my skills were so much better, but my energy, like when I'd go to a tournament, like I didn't even realize at the time that professional golfers literally rest like for the week leading into a big golf tournament, because they need to be fresh, because you play 72 holes of like, you're out there 5 hours. And I don't know if you play golf, George, but it's mentally draining, especially when you're like competing. Like you don't understand, like you don't realize how much you're focusing for 5 hours. Like you're just dialed in, like focusing on every shot, and you finish the round and you're like, you're literally exhausted. And so I worked really hard, but I didn't actually allow myself to reap that benefit by resting strategically, going into events. So I guess you could say there was a lack of like strategy there, but overall it was like, yeah, I don't regret how everything panned out. I think it's all really, yeah, I'm totally happy with where I am today.
It's interesting, isn't it? You mentioned there about discipline, because I often think as people, the biggest misconception that we have is that we feel like we need motivation to get stuff started. And obviously motivation, there's an element of there, but I think the motivation is ultimately the most unreliable energy or emotion, whatever you want to call it, that we have. It's actually
Mm-hmm.
discipline that gets us over the line. And I feel like,
Mm-hmm.
especially in sports, I'd imagine that's such a big part of it. And you also mentioned about not believing in burnout. Why is that?
I just took a different viewpoint on it. I think I can't remember where I got this from, but it really shifted my own perspective on it. Like, I don't disagree. I do believe that burnout exists, but for me, it's like it was kind of, there was no end in sight, right? And so I think people burn out when there's no clear end in sight. So if it's not like, cool, I'm going to work so hard for the next 14 days so I can go and spend 4 days with my mum and dad and do whatever I want, right?
Mm.
Because you have that clear end of that time. Whereas like when you grind all day and like there's no rest, like I think, yeah, your mind and your body just like, it just craves some kind of, rest, and that can manifest as sickness. Like I got the sickest I'd ever been during that time I was playing golf, because you know I was incredibly healthy. Like I couldn't fault my diet back then. It was like impeccable, and I exercised, but I was like, I was literally, I don't think I left the house for over 8 days. It was like the worst sickness I've ever had. And I really think that it was because I'd rested so little and worked myself so hard that my body was like, you need to stop.
I mean, it takes I suppose it begins to take the joy. And I think as entrepreneurs, it's easy to take the joy out of the process, because
Mhm,
I think as well, I think we put a lot of pressure on result and we don't put enough awareness on the input. We focus
mhm,
on the output rather than the input as entrepreneurs. And I think the more we focus on the output, what does that what's that done for you? I know I've done it. I put all my sort of energy on the output and ignored the input, and I just got bored. I got tired, and I was a lot closer to burnout, because the result for output is over a period of time, isn't it?
mhm,
Like speak
mhm.
about, Boost Media. So that's been running since 2020. You said.
Yes, out of 2020.
Tell us about your journey with Boost Media.
Yeah. So do you mean in terms of like what we are just speaking about, like in regards to like the process and like
Yeah,
outcome
yeah,
goals?
yeah.
Okay. So before I do that, I want to just go a little bit deeper on that. So my mental performance coach, when I worked with him playing golf, so he works with guys like this guy Lucas Herbert, who's 27. He's just won 2 or 3 times, once on the PGA Tour, once on the European Tour, like making millions of dollars each time. Anyway, so my mental performance coach and I sat down like the first time we worked together, and he's like, what are your goals? And I was like, oh, I want to win this tournament, shoot this score, do all this. And he goes, okay, like interesting. Those are some really, really good goals. Like, do you have any kind of like building block goals to get to that
Mm,
goal? And I was like, no, like what's that? And I was like, no,
yeah.
you just got to set massive goals. Because everyone's like, set big goals, and like you aim for the moon and you land on the stars and you're closer, like that kind of stuff. But one thing that he found to work really well for his players was just to start with some really easy goals, right? So it was literally, he had this guy who was, one of the best in Australia. He had all these goals to like win and win. And he goes, set your first goal just to make a cut, right? Then the next goal will be to get a top 40. And so after his first tournament of the season, he literally checked off like 6 of his like season goals. And he was like, man, like I'm so pumped. Like, because when you keep hitting that, like riding across, or, you keep missing your goals, you just like slowly lower your self-esteem.
Yeah.
And so setting process goals that you can hit, like even those ones I mentioned were outcome. But for me, when I was playing golf, it was like, cool, what am I going to do today? What is the process goal? I want to do this drill. I want to do this drill. I want to practice for this amount of time. I can control that. So it's like when you have that, you can build wins and build confidence way quicker with process goals versus outcome goals. So same thing with Boost Media, to kind of get back to what you were asking there, is like, what kind of process goals can we set this year, this week, this month, in order to like, reach our overall objective? So yeah, I'm a big believer in like building wins, finding those goals that are, going to push the needle forward, and, making them process oriented versus like, yeah, I have to hit X number of revenue or it's like, a failure.
And I think that's such an important message. And we could almost end the podcast now. And that would be like a massive thing for entrepreneurs, because at the end of the day, as much as we say, don't be afraid of failing, no one likes to repeatedly fail over and over again. And I believe that comes from basically thinking too much about the outcome rather than the process, because when we shift it to process goals, as you just mentioned, it becomes much more controllable. And when we can control the process and control, that means that we can actually have an element of control towards achieving the goal as well. But when we miss that, when we miss the process goal and go straight to the outcome goal, it just adds unnecessary pressure onto what we're doing, which ultimately, as you probably know, Lewis, starts affecting your performance. And then that starts to affect your confidence, affect your motivation, affect your ability to do what you need to do on a daily basis. And so let's go into the business side of things. Obviously, Boost Media, I know you help businesses. Tell us what you help businesses with. Tell the audience.
Yeah, so the 3 main things that we focus on. So I like to say that we work with like personal brands to essentially fuel their businesses. Like cliche examples are like Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos, Patrick Bet-David. These guys have built huge personal brands that have essentially just fueled their businesses, right? People think Tesla, they think Elon Musk. So helping our clients like become synonymous in their industry. And so how we do that is like through 3 main mechanisms. So through publicity in the media, so getting them featured in, various media outlets, whether that's industry specific or like internationally and broad, like a Forbes or Entrepreneur, places like that. Then podcasts. So obviously getting our clients on the right podcast to, convey their message to a new audience and to, build their own brand and credibility, if you will. And then the last piece of that is content. So social media, taking not just the stuff that we do on the podcast and media side of things and creating the content for them there, but, like most business owners and entrepreneurs, like editing their own videos and TikToks and stuff isn't the best use of their own time. So we just handle that for them as well. So yeah, I like to say that we brand build for them, leveraging those 3 unique things.
What would you say is the biggest pattern in what mistakes entrepreneurs are making online at the moment?
I mean, mistake, that's a good question. I think one thing that it's not so much a mistake, it's just something that makes me cringe, is like everyone's so caught up in just like flexing and like, I get Stripe screenshots are a part of marketing and all that stuff. But like for me, it's just like, I don't really vibe with that a lot. Like for me, if I ever do something like that, it feels really inauthentic. And I think people are doing things for the wrong intention. It's like, yeah, let's just like show how much money we're making and like show this lifestyle that I have and sell them on the lifestyle. Like I definitely think sprinkling some of that in there is important, but I don't like it when people, sell people on a dream of, yeah, like I'm going to join my course and you're going to make all this money, when it's like, maybe 2% of their students have ever been successful with that. Right. So not so much a mistake, but that's just my kind of observation, is there's a lot of big claims and like not a lot of people who back it up.
And I think, again, going back to the pressure of it, when you promote that, if there's an expectation that if I come on as a client, I'm going to expect to get that result because that's what you're promoting. So then I suppose as a business, you have to be careful about what result you're perceiving to be able to achieve for your client, because if you don't get that result, they're going to be unhappy because they're signing up on a basis of you achieving that result for them.
Yeah, so what we do, like we set very clear expectations with everything that we do. Part of our onboarding process is just running through the clients what to expect, exactly like, what we're going to be doing. And so like one thing with like PR and media and branding is like, well, if I was to ask you like, why would some companies spend $15,000 on a logo, right? Like it seems like a ridiculous amount of money. And like, what's the physical ROI there? Like, it's hard to put a number on it, right? So it's like you build a brand, like this is one thing I've struggled with as well. I'm like, how can we quantify this, right? Like, so for context, like there's a lot of PR and different media companies that they don't have any kind of guarantee on like deliverables that they're going to achieve for a client. So like I've had clients that have spent $10,000. After 3 months, they've got literally, like, I'm talking nothing. They've had their name pitched to like journalists, which they could have done themselves and probably had more success, right? And so we give our clients like a set number of deliverables. If it takes us longer than that allotted time period, we just work with them for free until we get that. So it's like
That's clever.
our deliverables are there. They know exactly what they're getting and what to expect. And they have that guarantee that we're going to keep working with them until we do. So it's not like a revenue number. Like obviously what we do, like we've had clients that, immediately short-term benefits are like crazy. But I don't say to them, I'm like, this isn't a silver bullet, right? Just because you get this, it's not going to fix a broken sales process. It's not going to fix, all these other problems in your business, right? It's just part of the puzzle that makes a really great brand. Like you don't see these huge companies and the huge influencers not in the media, not in podcasts, not on social media, posting great content. So it's like, you've got to do those things if you want to be at the top. It's just like how soon you want to do them, right?
Yeah.
So that's kind of how we operate.
Yeah. So I think this is a really important bit for businesses, because what you're saying is when part of your onboarding process, part of when you start working with clients, you give them an expectation on what you're going to achieve for them, and you deliver that result. Like you deliver
Correct.
that result, whether that's within the time frame agreed, but you will deliver the result that you're saying that you're going to deliver. And I hope the entrepreneurs listening get that, because I think we see, because entrepreneur is like a sexy thing at the moment, isn't it? Everyone wants to be an entrepreneur, everyone wants a business. And I think what often happens is that they don't look at these things. They don't look at these things because it's so important. If you say you're going to do something, then you need to do it. And I'm a firm believer of showing up and getting results like that. So why did you decide to go into media from events? Why media?
Yeah, it wasn't more of like why, it was just like more of just like a spontaneous, like opportunity meets preparation. So one of my good friends who like I grew up with in Australia, he moved to Canada in about 2015. He was living over there. He got into like various sales roles and then eventually started his own like sales agency. And so he was building sales teams for, various organizations, and they needed people like urgently for a PR company in Oregon in the US. And he was like, it was kind of at the time where COVID was happening. And he was like, if you need some extra work, like we really need people. So if you want to do this, it'd be good for you to learn and see something new. It's a really exciting industry. And yeah, he got me like a job as like an SDR for them, just basically like setting appointments and whatnot. And I was like, it was my first exposure to that industry of like PR and media. I was like, this is incredible. Like, I was just like, a quote unquote everyday person. I was like, you never think like, how do these big businesses and entrepreneurs get into places like Forbes and Inc. and Yahoo and all these places? You don't know that they'd have like maybe a publicist or an in-house person in their team, or they have an agency like actually going out there and working for them on their behalf, because most businesses don't get any kind of media attention ever throughout the duration of their lifespan, unless they've like actually proactively gone and done something themselves or had someone do it for them. So yeah, just seeing that was like incredible to me. And like just seeing like how clients responded when like, they got a feature or something like that. It was like, yeah, it's incredible. I can say like the first time that I ever had my events company featured in the media, I was like, man, I literally couldn't wipe the smile off my face. Like I was like sharing with every friend and family member and like getting all this congratulations. So yeah, that was pretty much how I fell into it. And yeah, it's been incredible.
Yeah, I've recently had an article published about me, and
Nice.
yeah, well, I know what you mean. There was that like smile there, and it was nice. I got a lot of nice messages from people, which was nice. And it was just about the journey on talking about the podcast and stuff like that. So, um, yeah, no, I suppose it is a good feeling. You're right. I suppose it's like some sort of social proof as well, um, which happens. But obviously, bad media happens as well, doesn't it? You could be in the media for the wrong reasons.
Yeah.
And so you help businesses. Do you help a particular type of business, or is
Yeah.
this?
So I would, yeah, I don't ever say that we have a certain niche. Like I have always like tried to niche down, but it's never really made sense because what we do is like so industry agnostic, right? Like a real estate agent can benefit from being on a podcast, right? A mortgage broker, a lawyer, a coach, a consultant, or anyone who does any kind of business and like is somewhat known for that, then like they need to be building their brands, right? It's like I believe in like human to human business these days. It's not like B2B so much. It's like I'm a human connecting with you as a human. Do I like you? Do I trust you? Do I want to work with you? And so we kind of like, yeah, any sort of personal brand, someone who's actively the founder of the business and yeah, involved in the day to day of it. So typically company size of like 1 to 20. We have done bigger companies than that, but yeah, it's more focused on personal brands versus like a niche of a business.
Nice, nice. And I think that's, as you said, it's diverse, isn't it? Like the sort of thing that you're into is diverse and niching down. You could be closing off a market, I suppose, couldn't you? So that makes sense. And I want to go on to like the entrepreneurship journey that you've been on, obviously from events to media. What would you say is one of the biggest lessons you've learned about being an entrepreneur, about entrepreneurship in general?
It's a really good question. I mean, yeah, I'm sure there's hundreds of lessons that we get as entrepreneurs. It's
Yeah,
like day to day, there's always new things you like learn. But I think just having like aggression in terms of like your day to day activities. So it's like microaggression, macro patience, like almost like that's kind of like a Gary Vee type thing. But I do believe that it's like, every day I act with a sense of urgency. It's like, cool, what can I get done today? How soon can I get that done? And then, just understanding that it's going to take time for things to come to fruition. You don't just launch a brand new ad campaign and tomorrow you get 5,000 leads, like
yeah.
with their credit card, like, hey, pay me. So yeah, like taking massive action and just understanding that like you're going to have to do so much more than you think you're going to have to do.
Explain that a little bit.
Well, yeah, it's just never ending. Like businesses, you solve one problem, which just creates a new problem and you fix that problem. And so like, you know, especially while you're building a team, like if you're any kind of small business under like 100 employees, you're going to be, doing a lot of stuff most of the time. Right. And so there's always, like I mentioned, problems to solve, things to do, people to manage. And so, yeah, like every time you get to a new level, you just encounter a new set of problems and then you just have to, figure out how to handle that and then, find the next constraints and then keep it going. So it's like never ending. It's not just like, cool, I'm going to start this online business and then I'll be making 10K a month in like, 3 months, like my coach told me. And then I'm just going to be on autopilot the rest of my life. Like you probably can do that. Right. But I think most people will get to a certain level and be like, like I'm kind of bored of just being at this level. I want to do more. It's not just for the money. It's like it's for the person you become, right?
Yeah.
It's not just about this monetary number or this goal. It's like what kind of person do I actually need to become in order to achieve these goals? And so, people say, oh, he's got $1 million. Like, why do these millionaires need to go and make more? It's like it's not always for the money. It's like because like they get bored. Like what they're just gonna sit there and drink a pina colada on the beach. Like most entrepreneurs, that's their worst nightmare, right? They want to be building it, but they want that freedom at the same time. It's like, cool, I can go and take that afternoon off. I can go on that vacation. It's like having the flexibility, not just seeing freedom as like never working a day again. It's like just choosing exactly when you work, who you work with.
And I just can't run over what you just said about, because I always toy with the fact that what's more important, achieving the goal or who you become when to achieve that goal.
Mm.
And because that's the win. Do you know what I mean? That's the win, who you become in the process of achieving that goal.
Mm-hmm.
What would you say is more important?
I would say the person, like,
Yeah.
I've hit certain revenue goals that, like, a year ago, 2 years ago, I was like, I would have only dreamed of. And like, I remember telling my mentor, I'm like, I just hit that goal and like, I don't feel any different. Like, it's not like,
Yeah.
it's not like, oh, wow. Like, obviously if I had like 100 million or $10 million hit my bank account tomorrow, I'd be like, okay, that's pretty cool. Obviously if I earned it, but point being is like, I think you get so much more excited. Like, I'll give you an example. So like, I started working with a mentor specifically on like, sales training and coaching, like, just to improve my skills and be able to train other team members. And so like, I was never really good at handling any kind of objection, right? Like, someone would say, hey, I just need to think about it. I said, cool, no worries. But like, as I've learned, and as like most business owners will learn or do know, that like, if you let people go like that, like, a lot of them just like won't come back. They might be like, oh, I'm not 100% sure. So it's our responsibility there to like ask the right questions to make them come to the decision that this is the thing that they need, right? It's not forcing the product, it's asking these questions. And I had this lady on the phone, and like, I didn't really expect her to close as a client, but I just like asked these questions and handled these objections from these things that I learned. And it was literally to collect a $250 deposit, right? She wasn't ready to move forward the whole thing, but I gave her a flexible deposit to get it at the beta pricing. And I remember after handling that call, I got up, I was like, wow, like, I just handled all these objections. That's incredible. Like, I did not give two damn about the $250. It was like, I literally just
You
handled all these
developed.
things. I had no idea how to do that. And so for me, that was way more exciting than hitting like a certain number of revenue in a day or a week, whatever. So I think, just from my own experience, I think it's about doing these things that grow you as the person, that you can, get a different kind of joy out of.
Because the novelty, I don't think the novelty wears off, because that will manifest in every area of your life when you become something better than what you were.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I agree with you 100%, Lewis, because I think who we become in the process of achieving a goal is more important than actually achieving the goal.
Mm-hmm.
For those reasons that I just said about that, because that manifests in every area. I know over the last 3 to 4 years, I've become a better man, I've become a better son, I've become a better brother, I've become a better boyfriend through growing as an individual through the vehicle of entrepreneurship. That's been that's been my vehicle. Maybe for someone else it's sports, maybe for someone else it's gym, maybe for someone else it's gaming. I don't know, but a pattern that I see often is that it's very, like, maybe to some people, but on the macro, what gives people fulfillment is never the external. It's never selling your business. It's never the money value of what you get from a client. It's the moments in which you grow. And usually that comes after a shitload of stress. Usually that comes after lots of problems, as you said. And I want to go back onto that, Lewis, because I think one of the most outstanding thing I find about successful entrepreneurs is their relationship with problems. And I'm interested to find out, what is your relationship with problems?
I like to solve problems as quick as possible. Like, 99% of the time on the solution, 1% of the time on the problem, right? Like I said before, problems are always going to come up, always going to have challenges. And so, it's like, the sooner that you solve those problems and like handle them, then the sooner you can just move on and, I guess, face the next problem, right?
Yeah. Because I think mentally people relationship with problems is often, they don't see problems. Their perception can be ill towards it, I believe. And what I've learned from successful people, I've interviewed people from all over the world now, from Hall of Famers to songwriters. And one thing I've noticed as a pattern is they have a healthy relationship with problems.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Lewis, I'm going to begin to wrap this up. Now, you've got a business, you've got a team. When I say the word leadership, what comes to mind for you?
Yeah, well, the first thing that comes to mind is just pulling the rope. leading people in the direction that, you know, you're heading. And yeah, like leadership is something I've been working on a lot at the moment as well, because, you know, I'm still pretty young, like 27 years old. Like, you know, I've been running a business for like 3 years now, including the events company. So it's like, I'm still so young in business, right? Like it's incomprehensible, like, because I'm never going to stop doing it. It's like a forever thing. So
Yeah.
I'm so early in on it that it's like, I have so much to learn. And like, having worked with a great mentor for the last like 10 months, it's like, I realized that there was a lot of gaps in our culture, a lot of things need to be fixed there. And that came down to my leadership. And like, I've identified that like earlier in the year, like I wasn't showing up as the leader that I needed to be. And then that was affecting my team's performance. So like understanding that like all the problems in the business, they're all mine. Like,
Yeah.
you know, and owning that, and then, you know, taking the right steps to, yeah, make sure that those things don't affect the team, and that I'm improving as a person and showing up as, you know, showing up how I want everyone else to show up, right?
Yeah. What would you say your biggest challenge has been as a leader so far?
Just managing people. I love people, but I really don't like micromanaging. And it's just one of those things that you have to go through. Like I can't just delegate every single thing. I mean, I guess I could, right? I never like say I couldn't. It just wouldn't feel right yet just to delegate that. So yeah, just managing people. I just don't like, you know, simple questions over and over. So I think, yeah, just hiring the right people actually is like a game changer. Like I realized recently when I hired a absolute gun, that one good person is worth like 2 or 3 average people.
Yeah.
And it's
Yeah.
like, would you rather pay more for one good person or pay, you know, spread it out across 3? It's like, you'd rather have one gun, because then it's going to be less for you to manage. And if they can do the same output, if not better, then it makes a lot of sense.
And just the last little piece before we go. What would your final words be to an entrepreneur starting their journey right now?
Yeah, just to move quickly, like, and take action. Like things are in business on like a bird's eye view. It's very simple, right? You find a product that people want, you go out there and get it, and then you give it to them, right? I think people overcomplicate it. They think they need a million flashy things, but just keep it simple. Find something people want, solve that problem for them, and, you know, charge the money, deliver on the service. And it's, yeah, pretty simple.
And where can people find you, Lewis? Let's plug your socials.
Yeah, just Lewis Shank. Instagram's probably the best place. Got a bunch of free media resources and content stuff. So if anyone wants any of that, I'll just send them their way. So send me a DM.
Perfect. I'll put that in the bio as well. And then you can go and follow Lewis, get some assistance on that. But look, if you're still here, you're still listening. First of all, I want to say thank you for your time. You know what to do. Subscribe to the channel. Follow. Just do something helpful. Let's get to top 100 in the UK for entrepreneurship. We were 166 last month, so only 66 more. With your help, we might just get it to 100. Remember, this is just a boy from the streets doing his thing. Anyway, it's your boy, Real Talk George. Go follow the socials. But for now, thanks for coming. See you next week. God bless. Let's go.